something like that. If you see something like this is a table showing salaries, wages, employee benefits. This is all summarized data. And I'm saying that because, you know, how do I explain this? FY 2021, FY 2022, you see that this probably came from somewhere else that lists 2021 separately into itemized data, and then 2022 separately into itemized data separately. And then they brought this together into this one table. So somewhere in the government systems, they have separate databases showing just 2021 in more detail and 2022 in more detail. We're just going to quickly say that and then move on and then cover that later in our presentation.
I should maybe say I started the recording a little bit late, but maybe for the purpose of posterity, I should say we've introduced Yoohyun, and Krista has shared her data about the rail and pointed out that there's been a lot of civil beat coverage, but Yoohyun's explaining kind of how we can dig into this for news stories.
Mm-hmm. And this one doesn't have it, but usually in government reports or any kind of research or even like academic reports, you want to look at footnotes. Footnotes are what come, like there's one right there. That's just a note, but usually footnotes have data sources or sources in general where people got the information that they're putting on the report. And that gives you clues as to where you can find the original source. So that's one way to find out. So good job, Krista.
Yoohyun, can you make your screen a little bigger when you share? Is that possible, or?
Like that?
There it is. It's getting a little bigger. Yeah.
All right. But we are moving on to the next spreadsheet. Nate, we're only going to look at one of these. Which one would you like for us to look at?
Do you want raw data or like aggregated data?
Let's look at raw data.
Okay, the first one is raw data. It's all the transactions from Lucy's lab in 2020.
I do not have access. Will you make it public?
Sure.
I have so many tabs open. And I'm glad you said raw and aggregated. So those are also two concepts that we'll be talking about. So raw data, when Nate says that, raw data is when data breaks down to the most fine and granular level. So we're talking about data about like one place, person, or thing, or an incident, as opposed to summarized data like we saw with the HART statistics. So that we were seeing summarized or aggregated data about a whole year, as opposed to one day of the year or 1 month of the year. So if we were to see raw data about, you know, that particular year, you know, we would see like in that one day, you know, the profit was such or something like that.
I submitted another link in the chat. This one should be available. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it is
didn't know.
open, and now we are going to look at it. I'm going to share my screen again. Here you go. Can everybody see this? All right, got a nod. So this is a perfect example of raw data. Thank you, Nate, for sharing. because you can see that each row is about one transaction. And we can take this and make a new data set or a new table and make it into an aggregated set about total sales or total discounts, total gross sales, total amount in partial refunds.
Yoohyun, I think we were talking about with Nate, and I think this is why maybe he was going to get this data set, correlations between infection rates. You know, we understand that there are issues with infection rates and the actual presence of the virus, but correlations between the infection rates on Oahu and business activity and revenue. So I think that was one thing he was interested in about this data set.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess I was interested in looking at like how the news affected revenue on like a small business. So like if we compare, say, 12/28, what the news reported, like say there was 100 cases, how did that affect the sales? And then looking over how the news
I think the
affected
easiest
sales over a
way
year.
to find that out would be to visualize it. To take gross sales, put it out on a graph, and put that same graph map out the infection rates, and see if the lines, you know, show a similar pattern. And I think that, you know, some of those similar visualizations have already been done by like parties like Yoohyun. But I think we'll save the questions for later as we move along. All right. So this is a great example of raw data showing by transaction. So that's the difference. This is raw data versus aggregated data. So thanks for sharing, Nate. And then who is next? Aaron. I will open this up and start sharing.
And I think, Ethan, you had difficulty finding raw data, but you probably have questions, right, about what you found with the arts. You're muted, but based on what we were talking about on Tuesday, I think I can pull up our Google Doc about that.
Those questions. Yeah. I don't know how they would relate to what we're going over, though.
Yeah, not at this point.
All right. Aaron, do you want to talk about what you wanted to share with this?
Yeah, if you go a little further down, there is a data set. And I was just kind of like trying to figure out how to analyze it and kind of what the data set would be telling as in terms of like a story.
Let's see. Men's baseball. So what are these values? Single year, multi-year? Is this like attendance or, okay, it's score.
I believe it has to do with academic performance.
Okay. So the higher, the better. Is that it?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, I honestly don't know what to make of it. So are they trying to measure if like student athletes are doing well academically?
Looks like they're trying to track. Isn't that per year up at the headers at the top of the column? They're trying to track the progress, like whether student performance is improved. No.
Okay. So, I mean, just at first look, baseball players are above national average. basketball players also, football, not so much. I think it's pretty straightforward. This is also aggregated data, but this looks like it was done by another news outlet. Or it's NCAA data that they got, that they published, that KITV published. I honestly would not take this and use it if it's not directly from NCAA. That would be my advice. But I think the issue itself is very interesting, and perhaps you could request from NCAA yourself data regarding students' student athletes' academic performance.
Did you look? Maybe it's on the website, on the NCAA website.
It could possibly be up there. And that's probably where KITV got it. All right. And we're just quickly looking at these to see, to kind of get an understanding of where everybody's at with understanding of data, not to, figure out what to do with it right now. All right, moving on to the next one. Let's see what we've got here. It's still loading a little bit. Still loading. Aloha Stadium Conceptual Development Report. I will share my screen now. Even though it's still loading. Is it 1 million pages? All right.
Yeah, it's like
Tell us
200
what you
pages.
wanted to share.
Okay, I actually found this data set through one of the Civil Beat articles that Blaze did on the new Aloha Stadium. So it was like a study done 4 years ago on how much it would actually cost to renovate Aloha Stadium. So it's like basically like, I think from what I could gather, it was like an analysis of revenue, spending, all the events that they hold there, like yeah, like how many people actually like show up each weekend, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. All right. So just by looking at this, we can also tell that this is aggregated. When you see like any sort of like report and tables like this, you can pretty much guess that it's aggregated. And somewhere in some government cyberspace somewhere, there's data about data that details in 2014 how much revenue was generated from swap meet, parking, food, beverage, rent, advertising, interest, stadium tours, miscellaneous. So that by itself might be really interesting to analyze. And maybe year by year, news outlets want to follow that kind of coverage. And also to see what kinds of events generate the most revenue for the Aloha Stadium. And maybe if like, I mean, this will never be the case. If football games generated no revenue, like they might consider cutting it, something like that. All right. So you guys did, let me just stop sharing so I can see everybody's nameplates. Ethan, I know you had trouble finding raw data, but that's okay. But you guys all looked for it and then you found some sort of numbers. And even if you had trouble, that's okay, because like this is all a learning process. So right now I'm just going to kind of go over what data journalism is and what people mean when they say data journalism. And then after that, we're going to go over some data literacy concepts to kind of go over some of the technical concepts to get you in the mindset of approaching data. And then that'll give you some real practical tips on how to get data and to also get documents and to just to develop an aptitude for getting documents and data as a journalist. And I will also, if you guys want, talk about developing an aptitude for getting those things, even as a student journalist, because I've also been there, and you might get really stonewalled sometimes, but like you can do it. You can do it. All right. So I will pull up my data journalism intro slides, and here we go. How do I make it full screen? View, present. Can everybody see all right? All right. So when we say data journalism, it's basically works of journalism, same as like other news stories, but it's data journalism is based on findings of data that are a result of independent research, mining, and analysis of that data by journalists. And it's not based on aggregated data like the tables that you see in somebody else's reports. It's raw data that journalists obtained or collected themselves and analyzed. But how is that different from like academic studies that like researchers do at the university or something? The difference is that at academic researchers don't like cite real people or like prominently feature real people. Journalists, we interview people and feature how the data impacts people. That's what we do. We tell stories of people. So I know that a lot of journalists still write stories that are like, oh, 50% of people are, children are going hungry, and then, don't interview any people or feature any like actual stories. I don't think that's good journalism. We need to be telling stories about people because that's what journalism is supposed to be. Data journalism used to be called computer assisted reporting, but I feel like that kind of sounds like retro, like kind of old. Nobody says that anymore.
Really?
So actually, I'm taking time away from a conference going on right now. It's called the National Institute for Computer Assisted Reporting, or NICAR. We still call it NICAR because it's like, it's not like we called it NICAR forever, but nobody calls data journalism CAR anymore. All right, so we're gonna take a look at some of the cool examples, some not so cool because I did them, but that'll show you some ideas about like what it is. But data journalism really has no beat limits. Like journalism has all sorts of beats: criminal justice, homelessness, legislative beat reporting, education. But data journalism is like the one kind of like job where you kind of get to tap into all of those things, which means other beat reporters kind of hate you or love you because you help them with all the data things. But data journalism actually is really investigative in nature because you deal with, you tend to find things out, but at the same time, it doesn't always have to be super hard hitting. You can also do fun stories with data. Like I think at my old paper, I did a story about the most popular dog names in Pima County. And like people loved it, you might, as a journalist, you might think it's stupid, but I actually love making people happy. And we got to do like a fun presentation with all these cool dog photos. And who doesn't love dogs? If you hate dogs, get the fuck out of here, So sorry, I said the F word. UH, forgive me. But
They don't mind.
yeah.
Nate
Right.
actually
Okay.
is working on a dog thing and had data questions probably about that. He wanted to do a story
Yeah.
about how difficult it is to find a dog in Hawaii, and he was looking really hard for both the broader anecdotal stuff, which is easy to find, and more hard information that's much more difficult to find.
I'm sure you can hit up the Humane Society. Yeah. That it's just about knowing like who to ask, and then, you know, getting them to cooperate with you, like, which is like an added challenge in Hawaii, or like and in other places too. But going back to what I was saying, data journalism is really just an all-encompassing term for like a wide range of tools and skill sets that involve data, but that are out there to assist those who want to do this. And we'll talk about some of those things. And so here's a recent example from Civil Beat that I worked on with my colleagues, Anita Hofschneider and Nick Ruby. You might have heard of them. And Jim was our editor at the time, who has left Civil Beat, but he was a longtime Seattle Times editor. But basically what we did is, after the whole George Floyd situation in Minnesota and everybody on the continent rose up against all the police violence, we wanted to find out what was going on in Hawaii with people dying in police custody. So Anita first started out by looking at all the annual reports for use of force by Honolulu Police Department. So those annual reports are like the reports that not too different from the report that Krista brought, like the HART report that shows a lot of different like aggregated summarized statistics. So it had a summarized table showing, oh, in 2010, we killed only, we didn't kill anybody in custody. And immediately we knew that was bullshit, because we remembered the person who died in police custody that year. So Anita kept looking through the different years, and then it kept saying 0, 0, 0. And we're just like, that's not true. In 2012, Aaron Torres died. Everybody knows that. So I just decided that I was going to Google, and this is all it took. I was going to Google Honolulu police killing 2013, and all these different names popped up. So I started doing more advanced Google searches to find all the different people who died in police custody. And of course, there was a very thorough fact-checking process to make sure that they actually died as a result of something that Honolulu police did wrong, and not, they didn't die before the police got there or something, you know, or there was some sort of dispute about it. And then we sent the list of names to the police and the Honolulu prosecutor's office, and they all like confirmed it. And when we went to the police department and sat down with the chief and did an interview, she was like, oh, I don't know what happened. Like,
That's the answer.
that was literally the answer. I don't know what happened. This isn't good. And then later she told the police commission, like, oh, well, you know, like, they're like inflating the issue. Like, this is not a big deal. But it is a totally big deal when you're like saying on an official report that goes to the federal government that your police department is not killing anybody, but you are. So,
Yeah,
so this is the power of like data reporting. So another story that I worked on with Christina Jedra, who is now doing more of the Honolulu Police Department coverage and is excellent at it, is during the pandemic, you might have seen on the news that Honolulu Police was citing a record amount of citations related to COVID, like not wearing a mask, not social distancing. And we just wanted to see. And then at the same time, we heard from the American Civil Liberties of Union that homeless citations were going way up. So first we requested the homeless citations database. from the state court system. And literally it was like tens of thousands of citations related to people sitting on the sidewalk or, you know, urinating in public, things literally only houseless people would get cited for. And then we also separately requested a database of all of the COVID related citations. We cleaned up all the names, matched the two databases together, and found that nearly 25 of the pandemic violations were houseless people. And we found that, you know, there were guys who were being like cited 10 times a day. Like police officers were going back to the same location day after day to cite the same people. Some of them were like mentally ill, houseless people. And these police officers were collecting a ton of overtime money while literally harassing houseless people on the streets, giving out COVID violations that were never going to go anywhere in the court system. So taxpayers were funding this like nonsense. So that's another, you know, instance of data reporting. So 2020 was just a data journalism filled year. More people were doing it. And also because of COVID-19, pandemic generated tons of data. It's just like everything related to COVID is like numbers, right? Infection rate, cases, fatalities, whatever, right? And of course, like, how many of you have seen the New York Times tracking the coronavirus thing?
Oh.
If you have never seen it, like you literally lived in a cave. Like not even in yeah, if you never like even like in passing looked at it, like you lived in a cave. Like cuz it's like the thing. Like if you wanted to go like visit your family on the continent, like you would look at it to see like what the cases are in California or somewhere, or like you want to see how Hawaii is doing in comparison, like you would go look at it there. That was like a gold standard for data journalism. And, you know, I'm not even going to click on the link because y'all know what it looks like. And of course, the Atlantic had the COVID tracking project, which was also like an industry standard. Like even like doctors were citing journalistic work, like data journalism, to be informed about COVID. So like that's the power of data journalism. And also, I really wanted to, this is kind of an old example, but it's just never gets old and it's relevant in Hawaii as well. So and I'm gonna send this slide to you guys so you guys can click on the links and everything. I'll send it to Julian later. So this 2016 investigation by the Associated Press was led by this amazing lady reporter named Martha Mendoza. And what it did is the team used satellite data, like satellite data in the sky, to track fishing vessels that were using slave, like indentured servant labor from Southeast Asia and freed them. Like, let that sink in. Journalists tracked satellite data to find fishing vessels that were using indentured labor and freed them, helped free them. Like, if you have no ambition in this world, like, make it this. Like, do you want to help people? Like, this is my goal, like, in this world, if I do nothing else to, like, help people in this meaningful way. So I would really encourage you guys to read this series, and you know that in Hawaii there are still, because of this like weird law, as long as the laborers don't land in Hawaii, the fishing vessels can still get permits to hire labor from like Southeast Asia without like passports and pay them like shit wages. So this is like very relevant, like in Hawaii as well.
Has Civil Beat been doing coverage about it? I haven't seen.
We're trying to, but you know, it's still like we're not that many people with so many issues to cover.
Right.
But this is a really great example of data journalism. She's my hero. Also, this is a fun video that is somewhat not appropriate that I like to show, but it's totally a work of journalism. So it's an even older piece, but in 2013, when it was a huge issue that all of these drugs were being smuggled across the US-Mexico border, my good friends at the Reveal from the Center for Investigative Reporting, which was then called CIR, made this data visualization animation about what 17 million pounds of marijuana looks like. And I will play it really quickly for you guys. It's only like a 3-minute video.
In AD 2005 to 2011.
How are you, gentlemen? All your pot are belong to us. Border Patrol and ports seized 17 million marijuana pounds on the US-Mexico border in 7 years. It is a lot of marijuanas. Now you will see what that looks like. Make your time.
All your base, all your base, don't belong to us. All your base, all your base, don't belong to us. All your base, all your base, don't belong to us. All your base, all your base, don't belong to us. All your base, all your base, don't belong to us. All your base,
So that was actually a way for them to promote their actual legit data visualization about drug seizures. But I think it worked. When I first saw it, I thought it was hilarious.
What is the
maybe
cat
it's so old.
in there?
I
What's
have
it
no idea.
like?
I have no idea.
It's cool. Cats are in there.
All right. So,
can
and
you share that with
this
us at some point?
Say what?
Can you share that with me? It'd be good to show others.
Yeah, this whole slide, the whole slide will get shared with you.
Okay.
So this next one is more of a an innovative example. This was built by my friend Casey Miller at LA Times. What this does, because California has so many earthquakes, what they did is they built this QuakeBot, and what it does is they have this internal software that picks up whenever there's an earthquake of a certain magnitude, the algorithm will automatically generate a post inside of their content management system that spits out a auto-generated story that looks like this. Magnitude 2.5 quake shakes in the San Fernando Valley. basically just saying where it is and what the magnitude is, just basic information. And if it passes a certain threshold, like if it's a very serious one, it'll alert like the editors so that they can send people out to cover it, because it might result in like human casualties or buildings breaking down and stuff. So, you know, there are so many innovative tools now in data journalism that helps us basically like elevate our reporting to a level that we never even thought before. So how do you even become a data journalist? There's like, there are now schools that offer like data journalism degrees or tracks and stuff like that, but you don't necessarily need that. I don't have a data journalism degree. Like back when I went to school, there wasn't even a class that taught it. There wasn't even someone like me who came to my class to give a workshop, you know? It was just after I got into the field already, I got to know people in professional organization and, you know, got to do workshops and stuff. But if you have computer science classes at the university that you can take, great. Or if you want to take like coding tutorials like Python or HTML or statistics classes, they help. If you aren't a member of SPJ, talk to Julian about joining, because they'll always have, you know, tips about what to do. Also, I'm a board member of AAJ Hawaii, and will always be trying to help out students with learning more about AAJ Hawaii. Also, you can join online at aajhawaii.org. And whatever courses that your school offers, take it. There are so many resources online. And once you get started on that track, you know, it'll just put you on that path. And also the absolute best resource is the conference that I'm attending and the organization that sponsors it, which is the Investigative Reporters and Editors. It's $25 a year for students to join. You don't have that money, call me. Like, I will pay for your membership. Attend conferences. They have all sorts of fellowships to help students attend. And that is literally through this organization is how I became a data reporter and an investigative reporter, because they offer so many seminars and workshops and training opportunities, and like all of it costs money, but they offer so many scholarships and fellowships, all of which like I got, you know. All right, so that was presentation number 1. Anybody want to take a pee break or anything? We move into the next one.
I have a question about when you were talking about COVID reporting. Like, what do you do as a data reporter where
you cut out for a sec there?
Oh, can you hear me?
Or I'm cutting out.
Yeah, your screen is frozen, Yoohyun.
I can just type it in the chat if that works.
I think she's frozen.
Okay.
Yoohyun, do you want to maybe reconnect? Yeah, she's gonna have to come back to us. So I should take a moment to interject that there she is.
Sorry, I cut out. Am I back?
Yes.
What was the question?
Okay. I was wondering if, like, as a data analyst, and with COVID, you were saying there's so many numbers with COVID, but then there's a lot of people that believe that like the numbers are flawed and like there's conspiracy, like if somebody was sick in the hospital, then like they counted them as having COVID and stuff. So how do you differentiate what is accurate, or do you just go off of like what the CDC has reported? Or do you have to take into account that like maybe like what do you do when numbers are possibly flawed?
So there, that it's definitely a moving process. You always have to be transparent about the limitations of the data. Not all outlets are like very transparent about it, but we always are. Even though it gets technical sometimes, you want to try to explain like the limitations. But you can't respond to every conspiracy theorist. That's for sure. While keeping that in mind, you do want to explain. And also, you know how some systems have like reporting lags. So sometimes like for example, on Mondays, the case counts seem a lot lower because like they don't like count over the weekend. So like we want to we try to mention those things in our, we discontinued our trackers, but when we did, we would mention things like that. So just being very clear about the limitations and the flaws, but sometimes journalists do a better job than others. That's what it comes down to, I think. And then other times, you know, the data is so bad that you shouldn't use them.
Thank you.
All right. Are we ready to move on? Did anyone want a pee break? All right. If you say so. Okay. Now for the boring parts. Hopefully it doesn't kick me off again. So data literacy, fun, awesome. I will send this slide to you also, so you don't feel like you have to like write down everything I say, or everything that's on the slides. Okay, so let's define data first. I was talking about this earlier too. Like, let's get away from thinking that data is this like monolithic, like mythical beast somewhere. When journalists say data, it's literally, we're really just thinking about like rows and columns of information that provides context. And each row should be giving you information about one place, person, thing, incident, just one thing. Details about that one thing, place or person or whatever, transaction. So the literal definition though is like factual information, like measurements or statistics used as basis for reasoning, discussion, and or calculation. And we're gonna skip the discussion because we had a fair amount of discussion already and we have limited time. And information and data can be synonymous, but it's not always. You can draw information from data and turn a bunch of information into data. And we can get really philosophical about this, but what you really want to remember is like the one thing, one row provides details about one thing. So David Herzog is the guy who started NICAR, the National Institute of Computer Assisted Reporting. This is what he said about it. For journalistic use, data, simply put, refers to any computerized file that uses columns and rows, a tabular structure, to organize information represented as text, numbers, dates, and the like. So that's what we want to remember. But when you say tabular structure, you think you can only use like Excel or Google spreadsheets to open it. That is not the case at all. And we'll go over that a little bit later. This is when we talk about what Nathan was bringing up earlier with his files. What are agencies giving you, or what can you access in terms of data? Is it raw or is it summarized? Raw data is the data we want most of the time. One row contains data about one place, person, or a thing. It's not summarized. Summarized or aggregated data is like the tables in the HART report. Table shows you 3,200 people filed for bankruptcies. That's summarized. So here's an exercise that we can do. And I will call on people this time. Honolulu Police Department gives you a table that shows the total number of pedestrian fatalities at 3 different intersections in the city. Aaron, raw or aggregated?
Aggregated?
Yes, correct. What gave it away?
Because it's 3 different intersections.
Yes, and also the keyword is total. Total by definition is summary, right? It's aggregated. Number 2, U.S. Department of Education provides a table that shows enrollment figures for minority students at each of the country's K-12 schools. Ethan, give us an answer.
Would this be raw data?
Yes, sir. Correct. What gave it away?
Each of the country's K through 12 schools.
That's correct. Good job, everybody. Number 3, Hawaii Department of Public Safety provides deputy-involved shooting data that lists the exact locations of each incident, the involved officer's race and sex, and the suspect's race and sex. Krista?
I want to say raw, but it also feels like it could be like a trick question.
It is raw.
Okay.
Good job. What made you say raw?
It was very specific with like exact location, race, sex, and the suspects.
Well, the key is actually that it's about each incident. Yeah, and you were right. It provides details, specific details about each incident. So that's what it makes it raw. What makes it raw? Number 4. Oh, shit. Shit. How do I go back? City and County of Honolulu provides a table that lists from highest to lowest a total number of vandalism incidents at its bus stops. Jonathan?
I'm gonna go with aggregated.
Yes, sir. Correct. What gave it away?
It gives like the total number.
Yes, that's right. So it's now I'm so confident that you guys will all be able to differentiate between raw and aggregated data when you see it on the internet. You'll see if it looks, if it looks like it's been calculated in any way, that's probably aggregated. If it looks like it's about details about one thing in one row, that's raw. So should we ask for raw data though? Like the answer is almost always yes. It gives journalists the flexibility to analyze and make it easier for us to examine that data and also test the integrity. you'll see that when you get raw data from government agencies or, you know, even the private sector, that data comes really dirty. And when you get further into the process of working with data, you will also learn how to clean data, because how many, even with like campaign data, people can't even spell their own names. People misspell their own names, literally. So you have to spend a lot of time cleaning the data. And that matters a lot in analyzing data. So it's really hard to trust stuff that other people have analyzed for you, because you don't know what they did to it to clean it. And also, when you're asking for raw data, if it doesn't already come with it, you want to ask for these other things. Metadata, which tells you about the data, including when it was created and stuff like that, and who created it, who's the custodian, and the dictionary. The data dictionary, sometimes the metadata contains the dictionary. It provides an index, and sometimes the column names in the data are gibberish, like, you know, like LD, SAT, like, what does that mean? Like, what am I supposed to extract out of that? But the dictionary will tell you that means satellite. And the metadata can tell you, oh, this data set is actually from 2006, so you don't actually want to use this at all because it's too old. So these are things that you definitely want to have. Most federal and state agencies already have these things handy. So these concepts are really important to remember: primary versus secondary. In journalism, we are always taught that primary source is the way to go. We have to do primary, we have to get to the primary source. Primary data, though, are data we collected ourselves. I think that that's not always possible for data. Collecting data is actually a lot more challenging than just interviewing someone. So secondary data is what we end up working with more. So, but try not to confuse this with primary source or secondary source. So although we want to work with primary sources generally, with data, we're going to end up working with secondary data mostly. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't collect data. We should do it. That's a more complicated process. All right, the technical stuff, formats. You guys, being millennials or Gen Z, whatever the fuck characters are, whatever, you guys probably have heard of all sorts of file formats. But have you seen any of these? I'm sure you guys have opened up an Excel file or two before. So here's some XLS, XLSX, XML, DBF files. So here are like some of the most common data file formats. You'll also see text files like TXT, CSV. You'll see CSV most often. So the reason that data files are often shared in text files is because text files can be opened with any computer across operating systems. So I have a Mac here, but some people like to use Windows. Some people use Linux. Text files can be opened by all three. So that's the advantage. Oh, there we go. So text files come in two different formats: fixed width and delimited. And fixed width is they just use width to determine what value belongs in what column. And delimited is like CSV, comma separated values. You use a comma to separate the values. So to get the data, this is the part where it overlaps between the documents and the data. So government agencies are required by law to collect certain information, not just data, but also documents. They're supposed to keep documents like when you arrest somebody, you're supposed to keep an arrest report. In fact, when police make contact with anybody for any reason, they have to document it. So there's a record of that everywhere. So knowing that, and that's all subject to public records requests. And government agencies collect that data and information to help them with their mission. Or they could be participating in an open government effort, which was huge during the Obama administration. And not all of it went away during the Trump administration. So Hawaii, most state governments have an open data repository, and Hawaii also does. It's got all sorts of data. Not all of it's up to date. Some of it can be useful, and maybe you'll get some story ideas out of it. I suggest you guys check it out, opendata.hawaii.gov. And here are some clues to finding data and documents also. So earlier we're talking about how state or federal law can require collection of data. The chief example is the US Census. US Constitution requires that data be collected about people's demographics. So every 10 years, and also the Census Bureau has all sorts of products like the American Community Survey, and the Tiger Files and whatnot, but the decennial census, the 10-year demographic survey, is like the chief thing that is required by the Constitution. And what that is used for is like, it's maybe you didn't know its importance before, but literally is used for things like funding highways, redistricting, congressional districts. So basically it comes down to how much money your state gets and your programs are funded, like the National School Lunch Program, Medicaid, Medicare. And so here's and there are some really stupid ones too. So in this link, for time purposes, I won't click on it, but there are some really stupid ones that you can click on when I send this to Julian. There's data collection for, another one is like the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency's toxic release inventory program, which Julian mentioned to me. That is the program that documents all of the toxic chemicals released by different facilities across the US. That is that documentation is required by federal law. So looking at what laws exist is a clue to finding data and documents. And also, just think about what kind of forms exist for agencies you most often cover. So I put the State of Hawaii Motor Vehicle Collision Form as an example, but I think another relevant example right now is like the Safe Travels Form. Have you guys traveled lately, inter-island or anything?
Yeah, I have.
So I go back and forth between Kauai a lot, and every time you have to fill out the Safe Travels form, right? That turns into data. And you can see that on the hawaiicovid19.com website. And if you go to the data portion of that website and go to Safe Travels, you see the form that you filled out turned into a data platform in real life. So just by knowing what forms exist in your bureaucracy, you can figure out what data exists. So the next time you fill out any government form, you can pretty much be assured that that exists as a database somewhere in that government system. Next clue. If you're covering a particular agency or a particular beat or nonprofit, just ask for a master list of what data or documents they keep. data manual. It may be called something different somewhere, but have a conversation with the person you're dealing with, the communications person, whoever. So education is a beat where the state departments are usually really good at posting stuff like that because they already keep so much data. And they will have a master list of what data they keep. And, you know, like you just ask for it. All they can say is no, or say they don't have it, but you got to try. So for instance, if you were interested in NCAA, and I don't know that they would give it to you, but you could try asking, hey, what sort of data do you keep? Do you have like a master list that I could look at? Like, or you, if that is overwhelming for them, you can be like, oh, do you have a master list of data for like women's basketball? Like if you narrow it down for them, maybe that's easier. Also, another good thing to do is retention schedules, records retention schedules. You could Google that right now, Hawaii records retention schedule. And you could browse that by department, and then it'll show you kind of what sort of records are being kept. You'll see things that you didn't even know existed before and get ideas. Also, like the report that Krista brought, some agencies produce like annual, quarterly, or whatever reports that give us a look into what sort of data they collect, because they'll have those summarized aggregated tables in there that show little bits and pieces of information. And you can like draw from that. Oh, they have information about this. They must have raw data about it. Then you can go ahead and request the raw data based on what you saw on the annual reports. Like if you look at the Honolulu Police Department annual reports, like we did, we saw the use of force report that had just a summarized use of force incidents, and where you requested the whole damn thing. All right. We do not have a hands-on portion for this, but we do have an assignment. Oh, this is not it. We do have a little assignment. It is not a very hard assignment. I'm going to send this link. In chat. So this is the State of Hawaii Disease Outbreak and Outbreak Control Division's virus tracker or vaccine tracker. Based on this vaccine tracker, I want all of you to write one lead, news lead. I'm not going to tell you which part of it. One news lead, and send it to me. And Julian can decide what is appropriate, what deadline is appropriate.
Okay. So just one lead based on this? So,
Or what you want, if you want a more story-like version, you can decide since you're the teacher.
well, I mean, there were a couple of other things that just occurred to me about assignments, you know, towards the end as you were talking, Yoohyun, which, you know, I mean, I think we can have this due as a lead by Tuesday. Just write a lead by Tuesday, but you know, I mean, they're working on second drafts now and kind of body of a news story, but you know, I don't know if there's. I have to think about it myself to know if it makes sense to ask them for a second draft. But a couple of things we were thinking of was one was, you know, to do an assignment based on a data set they found, but and we can talk about the the issues that Ethan ran into that, because I kind of asked them to do it either based on a campus beat or based on a general interest, and Ethan's was the arts. And we just kind of got to a point where we realized, at least for UH arts, we didn't know how to access data about that short of just reaching out to the chair of the department and seeing if she could get any. But we could give them a data set to work with maybe, or we could ask, I mean, while you were doing this, I was looking at the hawaii.gov website that you mentioned, because I've been very curious about the Honolulu Zoo ever since they turned down our efforts to do a data and documents thing in collaboration with them. And I tried to go to that website and find a data set for it, and I ran into challenges. So, but part of that may be, you know, something that would be involved in an assignment, like find a data set. You know, I don't know if you have any ideas, but that's something we could ask these guys to do. So either maybe provide them a data set, or, you know, use this site or that site to find a data set, you know, where we give them a little bit of guidance there, structure to work within.
Okay.
I mean, I went to this hawaii.gov one, and I kind of, I ran into a wall where, you know, I did Honolulu Zoo, and it brought me to a big, like, just parks. And then I tried to look at what they had for that, and I got this kind of non-information, like not even a table really.
I mean, yeah, I mean, that site is not like all encompassing.
Yeah.
Like it's so here's the link to the data literacy slide.
Okay, great.
And then I will
Do you want us to send the leads to you or to Dr. G, or for the?
I would say CC both of us.
So that was the link to the data. Is that for both data slides? Yeah, it is, right? The link you.
I'm working on it.
Okay.
Here's the data journalism slide. And Ethan, to your questions, I think that you would have to request that data from the art school. I can't see a way other than that.
Yeah, I mean, and it did raise the question of, you know, he had this subject that was interesting to him. I mean, I guess we had good discussion about it Tuesday, so I don't know if you'd have anything to add, but just of how, when you're interested in something, you start to turn that into a data question. Because he said, well, I want to cover arts. That's the beat I want to cover at UH as a campus beat. But how do I look at that from a data perspective?
I mean, the first question is like, you know, just literally a data question, and that like you have to request the data to see what the answer is. Like we don't know. We simply don't know the answer.
So you often go to find out what information is available before you start asking the questions.
What?
I mean, we were just wondering if there were certain things that you, like a thought process that you go through to figure out a data perspective on something that you're looking for. Like if you have a beat and
I mean, I think the question in this case is straightforward. So I would go ahead and request it to know the answer.
Yeah, I mean, we had a few questions, but we're also, I guess, just wondering, what data would have to do with arts. If you had a certain beat, I mean, I'd imagine every beat has a way of being a data, doing data about it, but maybe there's a certain kind of thought process you go through in terms of figuring out the best way to look at it that way. Maybe that's too general, I guess.
I mean, like in my mind, all three of the questions are looking at like the drop or the reduction in number of enrolled students in the art program. So I like without seeing the number itself, like I don't think like the trail of thought leads anywhere else. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I just meant the origin of the questions themselves. Like, like if you, like how you step back and you say, how can we look at this? Because what we ended up I mean, we brainstormed, is basically what we did, but we ended up saying, it occurred to me that based on conversations I'd had with other students who are in the arts, that like if you're taking ceramics, it's very difficult to take through remote learning. You need to do that in a classroom. So then that led to a data question, which was, has there been a real drop in the program because so much of it is hands-on? So has the, but I guess we were wondering about that thought process, because you must do that to some degree with every beat, since you're the data reporter. You look at a beat and you say, well, here's how I can throw in as a data reporter. You see what I'm getting at?
Yeah. No, I think that it's a legitimate question. Yeah, absolutely.
A lot of times I find that, when I'm trying to teach or talk to these guys about it, I'm trying to reverse engineer stuff that I do intuitively as a reporter. So I guess that's kind of what I'm getting at. Like, how do we sit down and figure out what we do? But I was wondering, you answered a number of the questions I had as I was going. Let me ask these guys. Well, we're actually past time, come to think of it. So, we should maybe say goodbye and let everybody go. But I would say, if you have any more minutes, we could see if they have any more questions. Do you guys have anything you want to ask her before she goes? Actually, Yoohyun, if you want to maybe hang out a minute, we could wrap up together once all these guys go. Do you guys have anything you want to ask her?
Yeah, I just had a quick question. Do you ever do like a correlation story? And like if you do, like what kind of like do you have to do like ANOVA and chi-squared and like all those things? Like if you're dealing with the statistics?
I mean, so I use R for statistical analysis. I don't know if that answers your questions, but we do correlation stories. But
yeah, they're learning the academic methodologies of statistical significance and ANOVA correlation studies. So is there a big overlap between what you end up doing, you think, as a data journalist and what, quantitative academic researchers do, or is there a big difference?
I don't think there's a huge, I think the difference is only in like the outcome, not in the process. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
like I said, the outcome, like,
So
like
did you,
the methodology. What were you saying, Julian?
oh, I just was gonna say, like, did you actually studied these different methodologies? I mean, I guess there's just the simple correlation methodology.
I think my statistical education like extends only to like my R education and like the basic concepts, but like I wouldn't say I'm like extremely skilled at it. Like I said, I didn't go to school for statistics or data journalism.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else have a question? I was gonna ask you, Yoohyun, I was glad you asked that, Nate, because I was thinking the same thing. You talked a lot about cutting edge. You showed us examples of cutting edge data journalism. Do you see, I wanted to ask like where you see the future of this going, because I was thinking about when mobile phones first started to appear, we had a lot of talk about how you could link location with databases within the narratives, so that if you were, if you were in DC or in Honolulu and you were on your phone, you could maybe even find stories about things going on with crime or safety or whatever based on where you were in town. So I mean, I've never seen that materialize, like that particular thing, but I'm wondering if you see really interesting or significant like directions where some of this is going.
Absolutely. Like it's going on as we speak. There's like machine learning, there's AI, like it's happening all around us. I mean, Quartz has stories that auto update. There's robots writing stories about stock markets for Bloomberg. It literally is happening all around us. Stuff relating to like location-based stuff like that literally is happening. I think most news apps, I think the Associated Press is actually materializing that, something like what you're speaking about.
So that like,
so many innovations are happening.
yeah, I wonder if content will change. First we had that idea that content could change depending on where you were in town, and that people would actually start consuming news that way. And then we immediately asked whether there was enough of a hunger for that or demand for it, like whether it in reality really made sense that someone would care, like what kind of news was coming up based on where they were in town.
I'm not quite sure.
Yeah. These are interesting things for you guys to think about, though. One thing I tell them, I mean, they do their last semester is entrepreneurial journalism at UH. And so, like, for example, a lot of the students now are getting really involved with social media marketing. And I'm thinking of having one of the seniors come in and talk about that. But we talked to them a lot about how, given the state of the journalism job market these days, one thing you really need to think about is how to seize a lot of the emerging technology and do new things with it in ways that, kind of create your own job or your own income. So things like location-based storytelling, merging that with data is, I think, a really important part of that. Also, I was going to say, you guys, that the information sciences department at UH is merging with our department now. So although we don't offer like a computer assist or like a data reporting class now, by the fall, we will be like, our department and information sciences will be one department as soon as this fall. So so classes on that are definitely going to be, on the immediate horizon. Maybe we could even have one as early as the spring. Well, I don't think we can, I think bureaucratically we're not able to offer classes that quickly, but by next year maybe. 2023. No, fall 2022, I should say. But did anyone else have anything more to ask about? Okay, well, why don't we all thank Yoohyun for that was amazing. I mean, I think these guys got a huge amount out of that, and there was so much there that it's really good to have the data set on there. Maybe I'll talk to Yoohyun just to say goodbye to her right after we get off, and if we happen to have an idea for I'm gonna have the Lalima posted, you know, I hope to have it up by tomorrow, but over the weekend. And if so, maybe if there's an additional data assignment there that we can do, I'll post it at that time. So thank you very much. Thank you guys for hanging out extra. She was sort of like a compelling, that was a really compelling visit. Take care.
Feel free to email me, y'all.
So yeah, sorry for interrupting you. I just, as someone like you's talking, a lot of the ideas start to come into my head about what you're talking about.
But I gotta go like real soon.
Okay.
What's up?
I just was thinking, any ideas about maybe sharing a data set with them and asking them to do something?
I'm thinking instead of me sharing, because I can share a lot, but the thing is, I think maybe because based on what they shared today and what we learned, I'm thinking maybe you have them share, except for Nathan, nobody else brought raw data.
Mm-hmm. So maybe the assignment would be to go find a data set.
Find original raw data. Bring a CSV file. Because based on all the resources I gave them today, they should be able to find raw data file.
Yeah, I mean, I worked with them on it on Tuesday, and it was an interesting discussion, and made it a full.
Literally, just by the website, openDataHawaii.gov that I gave them today, they should be able to bring one data file that is raw.
Right. Okay. So maybe I should share that one, and it might be worth.
So maybe tell them they need to go through the data literacy slides, and using the clues that was provided to them, they need to find a raw data set and send you the file and explain what clue they used.
Yeah, I think it wasn't until by Friday that I realized they would probably need to do some actual reporting to get a data set in some of their cases.
Yeah, but if they use the clues in my slides, then they'll have done reporting.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and learn so much about like bureaucracy also.
Right. I mean, they can also go, we can say use the clues, and you're also encouraged, if you want to take that route, to reach out directly to sources.
Yeah,
get a data
but if
set.
you're giving them that assignment, I would say cancel the other assignment so that they don't feel overloaded with stuff.
Okay. That might confuse
That's just
them.
my suggestion.
Yeah, I could just give them a longer deadline on the other one.
Right. Okay, but I gotta run to my next Zoom.
Okay, do you want their data sets once they find it, or no? I guess you don't need it.
Yeah, it's okay, unless you want my consultation if you think they did poorly or something.
No, I mean, I think probably just the effort to find the data set is enough. That and the lead thing is enough for them at this level on data. So that was awesome. You really kind of.
Yeah, but let them know that they can reach out to me for help. I'm always happy to help them.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Yoohyun. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Yeah, take care.
Thanks, Julian. Nice to see you.
Bye.